Story 1. The Easter Bunny Incident. When I was around 6 or 7 years old, Easter was always a big deal in my family. Like most religious holidays, it was an occasion that brought us together, but it was also infused with the teachings of the church. Church services and Sunday school, or CCD as it was called, were an integral part of our lives, so much so that it often felt like Sunday was a holiday in itself. That particular Easter Sunday, I remember the service being longer than usual, but I didn't mind. My parents had instilled in me a deep love for Christ, and I was just happy to be part of the special celebration. After the service, we would go downstairs to the church's basement for Sunday school. The church had a split-level layout. The main sanctuary where the service was held was upstairs, while all the classrooms and bathrooms were downstairs. The classrooms were arranged in a long corridor, and at the very end of the hallway were the bathrooms, one for boys and one for girls. Right next to them was a heavy grey door that led outside. It was always locked from the inside, but the adults assured us it could be used in case of emergency. On that Easter day, the basement was decorated with pastel streamers, paper lambs, crosses, and drawings of Jesus with children. There were even teachers wearing cheap bunny ears. The whole place was festive, especially compared to the more somber tone of the service upstairs. I, like most kids, was excited for the upcoming Easter egg hunt, and I could feel the energy in the air. After class began, I realized I couldn't hold it anymore, so I raised my hand to ask the teacher if I could use the bathroom. She excused me, and I made my way down the hall to the boys' bathroom. It was quiet, except for the hum of the fluorescent lights and the faint echo of the teacher's voice down the hall. I was doing my business when I suddenly heard a weird, scraping sound coming from the stall next to mine. It wasn't like someone shifting or unlocking a door. It was more like something metal being dragged or scraped against the inside of the door. The sound was sharp, unsettling, but not loud, enough to really scare me. I remember being confused. When I finished, I washed my hands, and as I looked in the mirror, I saw the bathroom stall door slowly creak open. To my surprise, it wasn't another kid, but a grown man dressed in an Easter bunny costume. The suit looked off, saggy, stained, and the fur was a dull greyish white rather than a clean bright white. One of the eyes on the mask was crooked, as if it had been sewn back on. But strangely, I wasn't scared at that moment. I thought, it's just the Easter bunny, and smiled at him, even saying, "Hi." The Easter bunny didn't say anything at first. He just stood there, staring at me, his head tilted slightly. After a long pause, he raised one of his arms and pointed toward the door as if guiding me out. His voice, muffled behind the costume, was eerie as he said, "You're the lucky chosen child. I have a gift for you outside." Excited by the idea of being selected for a special Easter surprise, I didn't hesitate. Without thinking, I opened the large grey door that led outside. The bunny followed me closely, walking across the church parking lot to a secluded area behind the building near a dumpster and some bushes. There was a car parked there, partially hidden from view. As we walked closer, I realized something was wrong. I hadn't noticed the car earlier, and now, as I was led closer to it, I saw another Easter bunny emerge from the car. I froze. Confusion and unease washed over me. My young mind couldn't make sense of what I was seeing. 2 Easter bunnies. Something about the whole situation felt off. Just as I started to feel the weight of fear creeping in, something miraculous happened. One of the teachers, Miss Sabrina, happened to be walking around the church. She must have seen us and immediately screamed, a sound I will never forget. The Easter Bunny who had been leading me let go of my hand and bolted toward the car. I didn't hesitate and ran straight to Miss Sabrina. When I turned back, I saw the car speed away. The police were called, and I was questioned about what happened. They didn't have much to go on though, as there were no reports of missing children, and the man in the costume had vanished without a trace. The police theorized that the person in the suit must have had access to the church and knew the layout, especially the back door that had been left unlocked. What still haunts me to this day is the fleeting glimpse I had of a child in the back seat of that car, though I can't be sure if it was real or a trick of my mind. Story 2: The Manhunt Incident. The following Easter, I had a very different experience with my friends. Now in high school, we were way past the age of Easter egg hunts, but we still enjoyed some kind of competition during the holiday. My friends and I created a game that was a mix between a manhunt and an Easter egg hunt, where the seekers had to protect some eggs while finding the hiders. It was all fun and games until things took a darker turn. This particular year, I was spending Easter at my friend Raz's house. His family lived in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by woods. His backyard bordered a wooded area, which made for the perfect setting for our games. Raz's parents were out of town, and we were all spending the night at his house. The game we decided to play was Manhunt, a game where the seekers would try to find and tag the hiders. The twist was that the seekers also had to hide some eggs, which the hiders could capture in order to win. It was late in the evening when the game began. The sun had already set, but there was still enough light for us to see. I was with Chuck and Raz on the seeking team, and we set out with flashlights to find the hiders. I wandered into a thicker part of the woods, relying on the moonlight and the dim glow from my flashlight to guide me. I was on high alert, trying to be as sneaky as possible, but I didn't expect what happened next. I saw something move about 20 or 30 feet ahead of me. At first, I wasn't sure if I was imagining it, but then it moved again. I quickly turned off my flashlight and froze. Someone was crouching behind a tree. They hadn't noticed me, so I decided to sneak up on them. I slowly moved forward, trying to circle around behind them, and then, with a burst of energy, I lunged forward, tapping them on the shoulder and shouting, "Gotcha!" When the figure turned around, I was struck with a wave of fear. This wasn't one of my friends. It was a grown man, his hair slicked back, his eyes wide and unblinking like he was on drugs. His clothes were torn, and he smelled foul. Before I could react, he tackled me to the ground, and his hands were around my throat, pressing down with all his weight. For a moment, I thought I was going to die. Just as I was losing hope, I noticed a flashlight beam bouncing through the trees. One of my friends must have seen the situation and was coming to help. The man must have seen the light as well because, without saying a word, he let go of me and ran into the woods, disappearing into the darkness. Chuck reached me, helping me up. He had seen the whole thing, but neither of us knew what to do. The realization hit us when Arthur, one of our friends who had been hiding, said that before the game started, he had seen two people moving through the woods near his hiding spot. He thought they were breaking the rules, but now we knew something far more sinister was at play. We eventually realized that there were at least 3 people out in those woods that night, one who attacked me and 2 others who were scouting the area. We considered calling the cops, but Raz, worried about getting in trouble with his parents, refused. He didn't want to involve anyone, and we reluctantly agreed not to. But the whole experience left us shaken, and I couldn't stop thinking about it. In the weeks that followed, Raz mentioned he went to retrieve the eggs we had hidden that night. He said it was the only thing he could do to feel like he had some closure. But it made me question everything about that night. What were those people doing in the woods? Why were they there? To this day, I'm certain that the men I encountered weren't just messing around. They were up to something much darker. Story 3. The Creepy Easter. At Uncle John's every year, my entire extended family would make a trip out to my Uncle John's house in the middle of nowhere. Uncle John lived in a large house surrounded by woods, and it was always a bit of a trek to get there. I didn't exactly get along with my extended family, as they were all very outdoorsy, and I was the odd one out. The only person close to my age was my cousin Kevin, who was a couple of years older than me, but he was cool, and we usually stuck together. This Easter, we arrived at Uncle John's place late Friday night. Exhausted from the long drive, I went to bed almost immediately. The next morning, Kevin and I spent some time in the basement, playing pool. We didn't have much to do, but we had fun anyway. The house was old, with creaky floors and dim lighting. It had this sort of eerie vibe that seemed to grow more intense the longer you stayed there. By the time afternoon rolled around, most of the family had gathered in the living room for dinner. The smell of a freshly roasted ham filled the air, and everyone was chatting and laughing. Uncle John had this way of telling stories that made everyone hang on to every word, but there was something unsettling about the house, something I couldn't shake off. Around 7 p.m. after dinner, everyone started cleaning up, and I noticed Kevin and some of the other kids running upstairs to the attic. Of course, being a curious teenager, I decided to follow them. The attic was one of the most interesting places in the house, filled with old furniture, dusty boxes, and strange things that belonged to previous generations of the family. But as I was climbing the stairs, something caught my attention. There was a sound, faint at first, like a whisper. I stopped halfway up the stairs and listened. It was coming from the attic. It sounded like someone was talking in hushed voices. I figured it was just the wind, but then the voices grew louder. I could hear distinct words. "Don't go up there. Don't listen." The words weren't coming from my cousin Kevin or any of the other kids who had gone up earlier. I hesitated for a moment, but decided to push forward. When I reached the top of the stairs, I found Kevin and the others sitting in the far corner of the attic, looking up at something. At first I thought they were just messing around, but their faces were pale, their eyes wide. I asked Kevin what they were doing, but he just shook his head. It's nothing," he said, trying to brush it off. But there was fear in his eyes. I glanced up at the spot where they had been staring, and my blood ran cold. There was an old mirror hanging on the wall, covered with dust and cobwebs, but that wasn't what got to me. What made my heart race was the reflection in the mirror. It wasn't just a reflection of the room. There was a man standing behind me, his face twisted in an unnatural grin. His eyes were wide open, staring directly at me. He wasn't real. He was just a reflection, but I could swear I saw his lips move. "Leave," the reflection mouthed, and my entire body went rigid with fear. Before I could react, Kevin yanked me away from the mirror, pulling me down the stairs with the others. "We need to go downstairs, now." He was shaking, and I had never seen him like that before. We rushed back down the stairs and found the rest of the family still downstairs, unaware of what had just happened. I tried to tell them what I saw, but no one believed me. They all just laughed it off as a figment of my imagination, chalking it up to the dark atmosphere of the old house playing tricks on my mind. But as the night wore on, the atmosphere grew even heavier. Strange things started happening. Doors would creak open. By themselves, lights would flicker, and footsteps echoed through the hallways when no one was there. I couldn't shake the feeling that we weren't alone in the house. Around midnight, when the house was quieter, I couldn't sleep. The fear gnawed at me, and I couldn't stop thinking about the reflection in the mirror. That face, Those eyes, they stayed with me. I decided to go back up to the attic, hoping to prove to myself that it was just a trick of the light. When I reached the attic door, I froze. It was slightly ajar. I hesitated, but then pushed it open. The room was exactly as it had been earlier, but something was different. The mirror, it was gone. The space where it had hung was empty, and the cobwebs were disturbed. I quickly backed away, my heart pounding in my chest. Just then, I heard a faint whisper right behind me. "You shouldn't have come back." I didn't stick around to see who or what was there. I ran back downstairs, slamming the attic door behind me. I didn't tell anyone what I had experienced. I didn't need to. They wouldn't have believed me anyway. The rest of the night was spent in uneasy silence, and when morning finally came, we packed up and left. I never wanted to step foot in that house again, and to this day, I can still hear that whisper in my mind. You shouldn't have come back.